ready to play now. Put me in the game now. I came here to prove it, I'm ready to do it, I can't be afraid now. Put me on the stage now, I'm ready to rage now. I feel like an animal stuck in a cage and I'm ready to break out. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. This time, like the last time, you better get ready to race to the top. I'm ready to do this, show you what the truth is. I step on the field, it's time to get real, I'm feeling so ruthless. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart. I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. Yeah. So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made up. Get in the game, your moment of fame, show them what you made of. It's time that we stand up, it's time that we man up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up. My time, nothing can keep me from reaching the top. This time, like the last time, I'm moving so fast, I'm ready to ride. I'm ready to throw down, it's time for the showdown. I'm ready to rise, don't be surprised, I'll take on the world now. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart. I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. My town, my crown, we know what it takes to be reaching the top. We reaching the top, we reaching the top. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. My town, my crown, we know what it takes to be reaching the top. We reaching the top, we reaching the top. We know what it takes to be reaching the top. Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart. I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop. Turning the track up, I'm never going back down. Hand over my heart, I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, none of you people can tell me to stop.
Live tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway, we say good evening, race fans, and welcome to round 2 of the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. We're happy to have you strapped into the virtual seat and along for the ride with us here on the iRacing Esports Network. We're alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, happy to be joined in the booth this evening by Jonathan Saban once more and James Rimmer as we get set to go racing from the virtual World Center of Racing. Jonathan, 1 week removed from a thrilling season opener overseas in Norway at iRX, saw the iRacing Rallycross World Champion in Mitchell DeYoung take home the first feature checkered flag of the year, and now things head stateside for a couple of weeks beginning tonight down in the Sunshine State.
And a virtual flight from Europe all the way back to the southeast of the United States of America. It's a circuit that was used in the real-world Red Bull Global Rallycross Championship. It was from 2014 to 2016. Now, the layouts adapted over the years. This is the final layout that was used in that championship, but we'll give you a deeper rundown of that later on. But we've got an all-star cast of talent to go with that.
And it is going to be a thrilling event tonight, of course. Everybody tuned in. If you didn't join us last week and you're curious what's going on, some of the best real-life rally stars, as well as crossover pros from the likes of NASCAR, IndyCar, the NHRA, and pretty much every kind of action sport in between, plus the pro iRacers competing in this 6-week championship, 1 week removed from that race win by Mitchell DeYoung and the St. Christopher Trucker Relief Fund iRX of Norway. Johnny, we saw Scott Speed in his Subaru finish second, and it was as well a third-place finish for Connor Bartel. The big thing is, of course, $10,000 could be on the line in this championship, and it's going to go to charity on behalf of the name of the driver who ends up on the top of the points. So we do have points now to talk about. Mitchell DeYoung gets the first feature win. He heads into tonight as your points leader, 48 points at the very top of the board. Atop Scott Speed, Connor Martel, obviously finishing results almost exactly mimic how they were in that feature race, minus a couple of points for the round 1 heats, but you've got Andreas Baccarou, Travis McCoy as your top 5, so that's where we stand now with still 5 weeks to go. What did we learn, though, in that opening round?
Well, we learned how talented this field is. We've got drivers from IndyCar, from drag racing, and even the best from the Rallycross world. Andreas Baccarou joining us from the FIA World Rallycross Championship. Let's not forget Travis Pastrana, too, who's racing out there. We've got the Nitro Circus team behind us at the same time. Scott Speed, as you said, drove ever so splendidly. And when we look at the points, Evan, it's all about making that feature race because that is the event that pays the most points. And just like we saw in the virtual iRacing Rallycross World Championship, if you don't make the feature race, it essentially fills in as a DNF.
It does not pay a lot, and certainly that's why all of the drivers who did not make that 10-car main event are struggling from 11th position down and into the points. But again, it is going to be a couple of weeks, and as we take a look at the championship picture, this is what the calendar looks like for this campaign. We started in Norway last week, but I mentioned we go stateside tonight. I want to bring in the third member of the broadcast team, and it is professional rally driver James Rimmer. James, we appreciate the time, and thanks for hopping up in the virtual booth with us. We've got a wide array of different rally tracks on this campaign, but Daytona tonight could be a real fun one.
Hey guys, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, this is going to be a great track. You know, I was there in 2014 when we ran it in GRC. I didn't race it myself, but I walked the track. I've been on the track. It's a great track. It's one I've been looking forward to on the calendar since it was announced, and I think we're going to have some good racing here today.
And it is different. It is shorter than what we saw in the opener last week at Norway. Johnny, you mentioned, of course, it is the short course that was used in the 2016 season. It makes use of that Daytona iconic road course, which is typically reserved for events like the Rolex 24. But a couple of differences that we even noted last week is that the Joker lap here at Daytona is designed to be a shortcut to promote passing, as opposed to last week where it was that European style of the longer way around. As well as you take a look at it there, we're going to be allowing that Joker cut on the first lap. First time on this course, an official iRacing Rallycross competition, and of course it is a shorter lap in and of itself. This track is very much designed to, promote and encourage passing, and I think that'll be a great treat for us tonight.
Yeah, I just saw a car tumbling and turning in the background there. This is virtual racing for you. But like you said, Evan, the Jokers in GRC were designed to be a shortcut, as you say. And back in the European world, it was designed to be a longer run throughout the lap. So it's a difference in rules, difference in layouts. Now, the difference today is normally in the real world, you can take the Joker on the opening lap. What we've seen in iRacing is that you're not allowed to do that. A specialty introduced for today is that you'll see drivers spearing off to take that Joker on the opening lap, which is ever so critical. And James Rimmer, you said you ran this track back in 2014. It was a layout that once, when you pass the start-finish straight, used to include 2 hairpins. Now we just go straight to the jump.
Yeah, it has changed a little bit over time, but the drivers, they've had some practice on here. I think they'll figure it out. This track has been fine-tuned over the years now, and now we're here at our final version. But I've got my eyes on a couple drivers today. Cabot Bigham and Connor Martell, I think, are going to really show their mettle today, especially Cabot. Cabot, unfortunately, got taken out in the first corner of the final there in hell. And, he is one of the better sim drivers around here that comes from the real world, I would say. And I know Cabot really well and Connor as well. And I know that they're sitting back there behind their simulators, and they've got each other in their sights for sure. So that's going to be an interesting battle to watch all day, especially on a shorter track. And like you said, being able to take the Joker on the first, here we see Seminuk coming around the back here, but especially on that first corner, being able to take the Joker, it's going to be interesting to see how it promotes overtaking throughout the race. And we might see a little bit closer rubbing throughout the race as opposed to what we saw in hell.
Can I quickly add there, this track, actually, can I precede that? Qualifying is ever so critical around here. This track is like the Monaco Grand Prix of rallycross circuits. It's so difficult to overtake, James. So as we ride on board with Brandon Seminuk from Whistler, Canada, he's got to nail this lap here towards the end of Daytona.
Yeah, you have to nail the qualifying lap. Like you said, there's not a lot of room to pass. The Joker is going to be utilized very heavily by the drivers, and I know a lot of them already have their strategy figured out. A lot of it's going to be play by ear. But a lot of them have a strategy in the back of their head because they know the Joker is going to be one of the few places they're going to be able to pass, bar a mistake from a driver in front of them.
And of course, they're all fighting for the Yokohama Pole Position Award. We saw Mitchell DeYoung earn that last week with 7125. That earned him a custom skateboard for his efforts, and he'll go for 2 in a row today. The award is handcrafted in the U.S. by Bear Walker, who makes custom and limited edition boards. So that's an extra little thing up for grabs for these drivers. You see Travis Pastrana, who is at the very bottom of the points, so needs a good showing into tonight out on the track for his qualifying effort. 3 attempts, and as he is coming to the conclusion of lap number 2, let's see if we can go on board with him as he comes back by the start. James, and how about you walk us through this qualifying lap for the 199 at Daytona?
So he's going to come around the back here. He's going to be hard on the brakes. It's a difficult corner. You have to have consistent steering throughout the whole corner. He's going to come through here. He's going to be hard on the brakes. Entrance with some understeer onto the jump here. Seems like there's been a little bit of issues on the jump, but this is brake early, get the car rotated. You got to get it back rotated the other way and get back on the power as soon as you can in a straight line. This back part is tricky as well. It's tarmac, so you have to hug the inside and get to the outside so you get a straight shot coming over the start-finish.
And there's that little kink right next to where the drivers are going to start. That's going to be interesting to be line them up 3 wide and often in the first couple of corners once we get heat racing in this one. But that onboard shot really showed us, Johnny, the differences compared to the racetrack. Not only in how it drives compared to last week, as Pastrana is going to junk it at the end of his lap. His best puts him about, I'd say, 2/3 of the way down the running order right now. Now we take a look at Justin Lofton in the 6 car. But what we were talking about last week was the elevation changes and the off-camber corners, and here it's all really precise braking zones, tight turns, and of course an actual built-up jump like that American style of rally.
Yeah, exactly. The jump at Hell was hardly a jump. You hardly noticed it. You just got a bit of air. But through Daytona, it's a very flat surface, even through the International Horseshoe. And James, when they travel over the jump, our sim racers in the World Championship last year were discussing how managing the oscillations as you land from the jump is a never big challenge. You want to land and make sure that the car's sticking to the ground as quickly as possible. But in these things, if you're bouncing around too much afterwards, you don't get the best of exits.
No, and it's a big challenge, and it all comes back to how you take the jump on the front end. I remember the first time I got in a car and took a jump, it was so backwards to me. And it's interesting because the iRacing is so realistic that you do take it the same way you would take a normal jump. You have to be on throttle, you have to have the car straight, and you have to be committed to it. You're right, if you land with that wheel slightly turned, it'll whip back around on you, and you may even spin out on the back end of the jump, which obviously would not be good for your qualifying lap.
Well, the drivers right now are discussing what's to come because qualified about to draw down to a close. Do want to remind you that today's race is the St. Christopher's Truckers Relief Fund iRX Sunshine State Showdown, just like we did last week. St. Christopher's is today's charity partner. It is a truck driver charity that helps over-the-road and regional semi-truck drivers and their families when an illness or injury has caused them to be out of work. The SCF is also working to provide programs that benefit professional drivers in the trucking industry. If you go to yokohama.org, or actually truckersfund.org/Yokohama, you can donate and get a $60 rebate code on your next purchase of a set of Yokohama tires. But the qualifying session has drawn to, we're ready to go heat race seed. We're going to have to dwindle this field of nearly 30 pro drivers down to for tonight's main event as we take a look at the starting grid for heat race number 1. And it is going to be a second consecutive Yokohama pole award for Mitchell DeYoung, the 33.296, by far and large the best of the qualifying effort. He'll be joined on the front row by surprise star last week from the dirt in Kevin Swindell. Brandon Semenuk going to roll from third. Alexander Rossi best of the practice started fourth, with Tyler Mediga, Justin Lofton, and Connor Martell through your 7 challengers. 6 laps, 1 joker, 2 drivers headed to the feature as we get set to drop the green lights on heat race number 1.
Very surprising to see Connor Martell so far down the order. He was one of the top 3 drivers for round number 1. He's one of the most promising talents too. He finished 3rd last week in the feature race and was unable to set a time in qualifying as he fell to some issues. All 3 laps were deleted. And Evan, starting from the back here, if you're on the inside, you would want to take that joker. If you're going to start on the outside, you're going to head to the International Horseshoe. And as Randy Cheneth famously claimed, the first corner here is the last corner.
And it's funny because we saw that last week as well, as I think the decision to or to not take the joker off of the bat was really determined by your inside and outside positioning. And when you find yourself 3 wide like we are with that lone third row of just Martell in the 21 machine who's got some work to do, tends to be how it plays out. But we'll see if any of these drivers use that special exception. Do they go for the joker right off of the bat? Just waiting on the 24 machine of Mitchell DeYoung to get onto the grid, and we're going to go racing for heat race number 1. And, again, we saw Swindell last week. I mentioned the surprise performance. He was real good as a very late entry, the 4-time Chili Bowl Nationals winner and the son of 3-time Wood of Outlaws champion Sammy Swindell. He's going to be right up there. Semenuk going to vary outside in the 180 machine. Maybe he opts to go the long way around to start lap number 1 the normal way. But when you're 3 wide like this on the grid, James, how much control do you have about inside or outside? Can you still decide to take joker on the outside, or is it really going to be determined based on where you get put on the grid?
It is determinate based on where you are on the grid, but you'll see some people back off a little bit on the start, and they might cut under to take the joker. It'll be interesting to see what people do. But you're right. You are basically beholden to what positions you're in, as you have to hold that for a little bit at least.
And we'll see if that, can hurt some drivers out. Of course, you can't really strategically qualify yourself to get a position that you would want on the grid for this heat race, because qualifying then divided up amongst the different heat races, kind of too difficult and too complex to try to figure that one out. As the drivers now mess it up with the gears, I think they're ready to get going up at the front of the field. Again, heat race number 1. The 2 top drivers of the 7, the only ones to move on. So if Martell, you talk about drivers with speed, Johnny wants to get it done. We didn't see a lot of drivers start from outside of the top 2 or 3, be able to break into those spots last week, so the start going to be ever critical.
And here we go. 6 laps of action for heat number 1. Mitchell de Jong finally made it to the grid here. It's been a very delayed start too. Talk about nerves. Scott Speed was saying during qualifying he was sweating bullets on his 3rd lap. These drivers will be sweating bullets here to begin heat number 1 as the lights will illuminate.
A couple of drivers get up too early on the lights last week. You got to wait for them to go green. We're off and away for heat race number 1. Watch the inside right lane as drivers go for the Joker. De Jong wants it. Swindell to the Joker as well. Looks like the number 21 machine to Connor Martell. So 3 drivers through the Joker. That's their one and only as we take the start of lap number 1. Brandon Semenuk, leader of those who have yet to take the Joker. The 180 car now falls to P4. He's in a battle with Alexander Rossi, overshoots the corner. He's way out and into the grass, and now a spin behind. It's Kevin Swindell.
So issues there as the 2 made contact. Martell has got a little bit too hot coming into the middle portion of the lap, but de Jong looks unstoppable. He's got at least a 3-second advantage, and the Joker Delta around here is only 2 seconds. So far, de Jong, you'd say, has got this in the bag already at the end of lap 1.
Semenuk and Rossi also opting to take the Joker at the completion of lap number 1, so they're going to be good to go the distance in this one, and it really is a battle for that second transfer spot. The fight's going to be behind de Jong for 3rd. Looking to the inside is Martell, trying to get a nose on Brandon Semenuk. He'll ride the bumper down that twisty, turvy back portion of the racetrack. Heavy braking final wide corner, looking to the bottom, but he doesn't have room to make it happen, and Brandon Semenuk, I think, is going to have his hands full for the 4 laps to go this time by.
So you can keep track of the Jokers as well, usually at the top of the screen. We've got the gaps there now, but we'll have that graphic on where, there they are on the left-hand side of the screen. So you can keep track of how many Jokers they have remaining.
Turned him. Rossi missed that corner, the same one that we saw an issue with on the first lap there, Johnny, but he came back onto the racetrack. He turned Brandon Semenuk around. Alexander Rossi, I mentioned, was the fastest in practice, but looking for that consistency still. And unfortunately for Semenuk, we questioned if he was going to be able to get up through the field to a transfer spot. He did, but he gets taken out, and now this the battle for 2nd, with Martell still there in 3rd, hoping the 27 messes up again. Same corner. Rossi can't seem to get that right-hander down.
Well, no, not really, but for Rossi it was very awkward collision, wasn't it? He's received a penalty too for that, but I do feel like it was a racing incident, James. I mean, he was just trying to get back onto the racetrack. He had nowhere to go.
It certainly looked like that, but the interesting battle now is, like you said, it's going to be watching Connor. Now, Connor thrives in this position. I've watched him be in this position about 100 times in real life, and he loves hunting people down like this. He knows the weaknesses of de Jong in front of him, and although they are few and far between, Connor will be trying to pounce on every single one he can. You can see him get right on the bumper there. He's going to be right on the bumper coming out here, and he's going to be wheel to wheel.
Trying to literally find every single inch of space behind the 28-year-old, and here they head through the International Horseshoe. Rossi's gone a bit too shallow into the corner, though.
And we got some cars beating into bang it even further back as Kevin Swindell just put a slider on Tyler Medinga for 5th and 6th. You see the full running order, of course, top of your screen. And for those who don't finish inside of the top 2, as there they are, that'll dictate where they start for the LCQ. But how about picture perfect? That's not a strange sentence for the 24 VRS VW. Mitchell de Jong to go pull the checker. He wins heat race number 1. Got out in front of the chaos. The fight for 2nd. Martell did it. Did not have to rely on the post-race penalty that's going to be handed down to the Indy 500 champ Rossi. Martell gets in cleanly from 7th on the grid. Got it done. And those are the 2 drivers moving on.
James, seriously, you need to tell these guys next week to have a huge pile-up at the end of these races, because as much as we want to see responsible racing, as we see the results on screen, it's always in a bit of good fun, too, to do a bit of burnouts after the event.
It's always fun. I was texting Connor and a couple of the other guys the other day, and I was saying, you guys got to do something here to wow the spectators.
Let's take a look at the grid for heat race number 2. And Sammy Matty Trogan, a fast driver last week, stays good. The Williams Esports driver going to be bringing us to the green flag. He'll be on the front row alongside Andreas Backerud and Captain Bigham. James Hinchcliffe, though, back on that second row of drivers, 4th position, alongside Chad Reed, and making his iRX debut, Jim DeChamp in P6, Connor Daly, the very back of the row in P7. And I wanted to touch on what Johnny just mentioned there, James, because next week when we return for round number 3, and we keep it here stateside, head out to Sonoma Raceway. You're going to be on track with these drivers, so you're using this to kind of size them up a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, a little bit. I know how a lot of these guys race, so I can adapt my racing to how they race in normal life, but it'll be interesting to see how they take on this next heat here.
Looks like we may be without Connor Daly. Unfortunately, for the start of this one, he was unable to qualify and is working on a technical issue on his end of things. So he'll try to get back into this, but it's going to be a tough break because that would put him at the very, very back. Whichever LCQ he gets dumped in. Heat race number 2, though, is ready to go. It was all those cars who took the Joker on the opening lap, I guess really before lap number 1, that very first inside dive that seemed to find success in heat race 1. We'll see if that is going to maintain to be the truth here this second time around, and if we can see somebody go Connor Bartel-esque and come from those back few positions and try to break into the top 2.
You've got some immense talent in this heat. You've got the 2019 iRacing Rallycross World Champion, Sammy Matty Trogan, races in the real world too. Drove an RX2 last year. Andreas Backerud, I mean, he needs no introduction. And Cabot Bigham's been ever impressive in the sim. But here we go for heat number 2. Oh, and a jump start.
There was Reed. Chad Reed did so good last week, but he was early on the lights. That's going to be a penalty, most likely, as he ends up behind. Oh, and Trogan's going to get turned, and he's up and over. Sammy Matty Trogan up and over Joker first time by as he got nailed from behind by the 11.
And that was Jim Deschamps. So Jim Deschamps in the Nitro Circus Subaru just went in way too hot, and now he's going to readdress the position. So very respectful from Jim, and obviously all in a bit of fun here for the All-Star Invitational, but not what Sammy Matty Trogan was expecting.
It's an unfortunate bit of contact. I mentioned that it was the first start in this series for the 11, as he's the Nitro Circus star car this week. Of course, we saw Trevor Parada wield this machine last week, but the one of the original Nitro Circus cast members, former mountain bike national champion, and he will yield the position to Sammy Matty Trogan, which is nice and all, James, but for the one car, Trogan's a guy who, again, wins championships in these cars on iRacing. He qualifies up front. He expects to get those results, and I don't care how good the next 5 laps will be. I don't see him getting back to the top 2, where now Hinchcliffe leads over Backerud.
Yeah, and Sammy's used to being a very consistent driver, and that's what he makes his money on. He's a very consistent lap after lap. So it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back after being spun out in the first Joker lap there. I expect him to run clean lap after clean lap, but it'll be interesting to see how far he can get up here. I know Cabot's going to be defending pretty hard, and I know that he's going to be running some clean laps, and Cabot really does like clean air. So if he has no car in front of him, he's going to be turning qualifying lap after qualifying lap.
Just saw a pass for the race lead up at the front of the field. 4th place finisher in last week's feature, Andreas Backerud. Moving James Hinchcliffe up and out of the way just a little bit, so drop the 29 machine down into 2nd position. Looks like a Joker behind him as Chad Reed now closes the gap in the 22. So it is going to be IndyCar and Supercross fighting for that 2nd and 3rd position. Of course, only one of them can make it into the show. Hinchcliffe, the 6-time winner in the NTT IndyCar Series.
USA and Australia in the commentary booth, and you've got USA and Australia out there on the racetrack, but it's a Norwegian who's proven that overtaking is possible around the Daytona International Speedway Rallycross course. And if you're new to iRacing and simulation racing, welcome along. This track does evolve throughout these heats. Now, the way it's set in this server is a little complicated to explain, but normally what will happen on the simulator, Evan, is that this track, the more you drive on it, the dirt will be kicked up off into the air. And James, just like the real world, it will become faster as the session progresses.
Yeah, so especially what we saw at this track in real life is we get what's called blue groove. And blue groove is when the cars have been over a certain line, a race line, so many times that it almost becomes tarmac. And it becomes very, very slippery tarmac though. So what you'll see is these cars doing the exact same line every time through. And just like you said, these servers are set up so it mimics the actual wear on the track. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that as time goes on.
We'll go back up to the front of the field as Backerud is looking to complete the last lap of heat race number 2. We saw the Joker by Cabot Bigham. That'll slide him up and into third, but he's going to be a little bit shy from challenging for second. So Backerud hangs strong. He'll take the win in heat race number 2 and punch his ticket to the Daytona feature. And James Hinchcliffe, tip of the cap, as he'll make the feature race, coming home in second position in heat race number 2. That is a big gain for the driver who did not make the feature last week.
Yep, certainly. And here we look at the results. The rest of those drivers from P3 and below, and by the way, very surprising to see Cabot Bigham and Sammy Matty Trogan not make the feature, but they'll head to the consolation races, or otherwise known as last chance qualifiers. So they'll have a second chance to qualify for the feature. But we've got 4 heats this afternoon if you're just joining us. 2 will advance to the feature from each. 1 from each LCQ will advance to the feature. So it will give us a 10-car final. But here we go for Heat 3.
And although it is not a Yokohama pole position award, third best in qualifying is going to put Scott Speed on the front spot for this one. He'll be joined along with Kevin Hansen and Parker Clearman, second, third. Ryan Truex, Cecil Begay, and Chris Atkinson, 4, 5, and 6. So only 6 starters. We do not have a lone car on the very back for this one. And it's been quite a week for Scott Speed in the iRacing service, as he's kind of been all over the place like many of these drivers have been. Went to victory lane in Wednesday night iRacing this past Wednesday on FS1, GTE Racing at Lime Rock, where he outdueled Chase Briscoe for the win. Back behind the wheel of that 41 Subaru tonight, and he's got the inside positioning as we look for the lights on Heat Race 3.
I heard an engine rev, but the lights aren't illuminating yet, so they should be anytime soon. It's going to be a 6-car event for this heat. Won't be 7 like we've had for the first 2. But Scott Speed has been so impressive in Rallycross in the real world. A 3-time champion in GRC. And he'll be joined alongside Kevin Hansen and Parker Kligerman. But look out for Speed and Ryan Truex, who are closest to the Joker here, as we go green for the 3rd heat of the day.
And it looks like the 41 to Speed, like expected, going to use the inside to get the Joker out of the way. Gets a little bit wide, though. Open up the door a bit for Truex. Behind them, a lot of contact as it's Kligerman and Hansen going at it. The NASCAR driver in the 77 trying to get up on the 71 to Hansen. This could be the best battle for the rest. None of these drivers on the Joker, just the top 2.
And James, a bit of extracurricular activity in Rallycross is what this sport's all about.
It's what it's all about. And what you'll see is, just like you guys talked about in Hell, is that the side to side, the leaning on everything, totally fine. The back to front is where we get a little bit sketchy. So we try and avoid that as much as possible. But absolutely, you're going to see these guys banging doors.
We take a look at Truex, Ryan Truex, that is, who had a very good showing last week, was actually the highest driver just to miss out on getting into that feature race. And let's go on with Kevin Hansen. Again, the 71 Sparko entry did not take the Joker. Truex in front has. So it looks like he could be setting the 40 car up right where he wants him. Here he goes. He dives to the inside, finishing lap 2, crossing over to 3. He'll try to go all the way for the race lead alongside Scott Speed, and he's done it. What a move by Kevin Hansen to go to the top of the board.
Smart by Scott Speed to give up that position, because the top 2 head to the feature. And yes, he'll lose grid position, so he'll start towards the back of the pack. But as long as he's in the feature, that's all that matters. But Speed was... he literally slams the wall there as he rejoins the road course of Daytona. But we saw him on 2 wheels at one stage. And in Rallycross on iRacing, we used to have bollards, and now they're replaced by a little anti-cut strip there. So it's just improved the racing here in Rallycross by quite a bit. But let me tell you what, one thing, Evan, Scott Speed might be able to make an overtake work here.
He was a lot better through that dirt section in the middle part of the racetrack. Got right up alongside the 71 when they came down over the hill. Although Hansen then set up the next corner much better, and he's pulled again at about a 4-car length advantage or so. But the Swede, the race winner in the FIA World Rallycross Championship, atop the 41 car right now, still comfortably third place is Truex, followed by Parker Kligerman. That is the top 4 right now, but the top 2 pulling away. Oh, and he's going to land on him over the jump. Scott Speed throws it away over the hill, and I was just about to say that's probably the only thing that he could do to mess this up. He stays P2, but man, that was almost bad.
I don't mean to laugh, James, but have you ever seen someone land on top of someone else?
It's okay to laugh because I have done that exact same thing in real life with actually one of the guys here, Connor Martell. And this is a position that Scott loves to be in. You talked about how Scott backed off there to let Hansen through. He let him through because he knows Scott is a very disciplined driver, and he knows that he's going to bide his time. He's going to run clean laps, and he's going to get in front. Obviously, we're in iRacing here, so he was able to land on top with no mechanical damage. But if that was in real life, I think we'd be seeing a recovery truck run out there.
And Evan, how about this? Parker Kligerman with Joker on the final lap, taking that feature race position from Scott Speed. So we forgot about that with Parker Kligerman. He will advance to the feature unless Speed can pull off a move here.
And do it. Parker Kligerman did the Joker at the 1 to go, got out in front. And it is going to come back down to that over jump by Scott Speed. Again, they were pretty comfortably ahead. I think without that error, probably would have stayed atop Parker Kligerman, but instead the 77 sneaks on through, and he will join with Scott Speed, or Kevin Hansen, I should say, first and second to move on through. Those drivers headed to the feature race. We will see Speed, Truex, and Co. later on this evening in one of our LCQ races as they look to make it into tonight's main event. But one more heat race still left to go. 6 drivers already into the main event. Let's take a look at your Heat Race 4 starting grid from Daytona International Speedway, and it is Christian Brooks bringing us to. It is Craig Breen to the inside, and Garrett Smithley way inside. Those are the 3 drivers on the front row. Travis Pastrana going to roll from 4th position, along with NHRA champion Ron Capps in 5th, and Travis McCoy in 6th position. Is how we'll rack them and stack them for heat race number 4.
I'm really excited to see Craig Breen and how he does. I was with Craig a few months ago at over the summer, and he's a rally star, WRC star, so it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to the short course rallycross with a Joker lap.
We've seen some drivers have to make that adaptation just in the last week or so, Friday to Friday. But of course, a lot of these drivers are trying to translate those real-life skills over into the virtual realm. The lights are going to go up on top, and we wait to drop the green flag for heat race number 4. Off and away, a little bit of contact already, and forcing his way through and into the Joker. How about that move? Race leader only temporarily now. Breen going to get nudged out of the way as Brooks shoves him through. They go back to the point. Now Breen going to get tagged. Push Strana into the tires.
And how about that into the Joker? Hardly do you ever see overtaking take place through that Joker shortcut, and it's cost Pastrana a potential slot into the feature race. He's been shoved off into the barriers. He's in the last position, and now without a Joker up his sleeve.
And Travis was kind of the innocent bystander in all of that, James, because it was Breen you were just talking about, who was in the middle of the race start. He really had, the car up on his inside at his door. I mean, Christian Brooks was there, but he kind of bullied his way through. It worked for a moment until he returned the favor, and that's when it all broke loose down in the dirt.
Yeah, you saw that he got the entry. He a little bit over speed on the entry there, and you could see that that's why he got him on the exit. He went a little wide, and he unfortunately had a little bit more exit speed there, which is why Breen got overtaken.
Through all the chaos, it is Christian Brooks leading this race. A couple of jokers still left to go for the back. You can see joker laps remaining now on the top of your screen, so you'll know who has to take it and who has not. And of course, Brooks and Smithley actually now the 1-2 battle, as Pecoy now is back on the racetrack having some issues in the number 3 machine. So it could open up the door for somebody like a Smithley, like a Breen, 3rd and 4th position to sneak in.
And just like the iRacing Rallycross World Championship, the graphic with the joker laps remaining only updates once the leader crosses the start-finish line, so it's not a live update, so don't get confused if you have a look at that. But Smithley does have a joker available. He takes it. No, excuse me. Sorry, that's just my live timing screen playing up. He hasn't taken it this time around. But no, he did. Excuse me. Sorry, Evan. As I have some technical issues here, as you can tell behind the scenes. Goodness me. But didn't work out for Smithley. He still remains in 3rd.
What's one of the joys about sim racing is we're all dependent on the technology to figure it out. We already talked about the issues that Connor Daly had in his sim rig, and it looks like Travis Pecoy has fought through some of those as you look off of the back of the race leader at the cars in 2nd and 3rd spot as Brooks takes 2 laps to go. And the benefit here as well is that joker's right before the start finish, so the timing up at the top of the screen not that delayed in actuality compared to, say, last week when it was really down in the first quarter. We had to wait 40 seconds to kind of get the official word on that one. But, Garrett Smithley more so in a battle with Breen here, 3rd and 4th position. It'll dictate starting position for the last chance race that they get dumped into.
That was an awesome pass by Craig Breen, as I've hardly seen a car pass through the middle sector that cleanly. And yes, Rallycross being clean includes bumping and rubbing. It's like football. So you get the gloves on, you get the helmet on, the shoulder pads. What this is all about. And at the final lap here, it looks like Brooks and Pecoy will head through to the feature race, and they've had a good one so far. Christian Brooks from pole hasn't looked back.
And it's smooth sailing up in front of the field for him as he is going to be clean from the top position. Final quarter, no late dives from the joker from everybody behind as they've completed it. And it is Brooks, pole to checker, winner of heat race number 4. He will as well punch his ticket in as the 4th placed qualifiers. There's a big jump by a couple of these drivers after the race. He'll be P4 on the starting grid for the main event. We'll get him a new virtual race car for that one when he needs it. And Pecoy 2nd. Also going to join him there. Breen, Smithley, Caps, and Pastrana all going to go to the last chance qualifiers. And by taking 2 drivers from each of our 4 heat races, we now know 8 of the names who will race in the 10-lap main event a little bit later on. But it is time to add 2 more. And if you thought it was a little bit cutthroat in the LCQs, we're getting set for a pair of 9 and 8-lap car LCQs. We're only the top spot advances as we take a look at LCQ number 1.
There's a lot of drivers in this, 9 of them who need to fight for 1 spot to head into the feature. And James, we were talking with a lot of drivers in the Supercars E-Series who are trying sim racing for the first time. When they jump into these cars, Scott Speed told us last week that it does behave very similar to the real thing. But the problem is in sim racing is that you don't get that feel from your butt that you normally get in the real world.
Yeah, and you're correct on that. You don't get that tactile feel. A lot of the driving, especially in the supercars, with a lot of the suspension travel, comes from what you're feeling through the seat and through the wheel. Obviously, you get the wheel feel through the simulator, but unless you have a motion simulator, and even if you do have a motion simulator, it's not exactly the same as being in the car. So these guys who have driven Formula One, NASCAR, all these incredible real race series, they're adapting, even if they're 5-time champions, even if they're 2-time champions, even if they've been doing it for decades.
I think a big thing as well with the drivers in this one is we typically looked at these LCQs, at least the way that they looked last week, Johnny, was that, the LCQs were kind of the best of the rest. We've got Semenuk and Speed. Those are 2 drivers who I would have expected to qualify in from their heat races. They're going to be battling against Kevin Swindell, who did good last week. I'm sure he feels like he should be in it as well. We look for the lights at LCQ race number 1. Green flag flies, 6 laps on the board, and Speed slicing first car to the joker.
Yep, now this is very awkward right now as Speed will lead the field away. There's only 1 spot to advance, so we're going to say goodbye to a lot of talent here. Scott Speed leads the field away. He's going to be ahead of, I mean, the timing screen's playing up, but it's definitely Brandon Semenak in the second position. I can see Semenak runs deep, though, in the middle sector after the jump. That's going to give Scott Speed a slight advantage here. And remember, the gap here, the Joker Delta is 2 seconds. You need to be within 2 seconds of someone to make up that drive-through time through the shortcut.
And you can see all the cars up at the front opting not to go for the Joker as they're all now chasing down Scott Speed at the front. And it seems like there's at least one driver, if not more, every single race, James, that's having an issue right here. This right-hander, slow speed. These cars getting down to less than 40 miles an hour, and it is a flat transition after the jump from dirt to asphalt. It seems to be the troublesome corner tonight for just about everybody.
It's a really difficult corner, and mostly that's because you're going from dirt to tarmac. So as soon as your 2 front tires hit that dirt, the car is going to understeer. So either you anticipate it with a little nip of the handbrake, or you rotate the car incredibly early. Both have their pros and cons, but you'll see both strategies being employed.
Oh. How about the V-dub there, almost taking off the racetrack? Is that Ryan Truex, who seems to be keeping things together now? So when we look at the Joker times so far in this race, your top 2 have taken to the Joker. I can confirm Ryan Truex has also taken the Joker too. I'm looking for the first driver. I think that's Kevin Swindell in the 5th position, who has yet to take the Joker this time round. Now, if he does, it's not going to matter anyway, because remember, Evan, we're only looking for that driver in the 1st position.
And right now, because of the good start that Scott Speed had, again, having to wrestle his way down to the bottom, he's kind of way out in front as now Tyler Medinga is way off and into the grass in the 23. Clipped the tires, headed up to the ramp, and nearly flipped that thing over. He's going to hang on. He is all right, but the 4-time Monster Jam Arena Series champion having a rough go at it in this LCQ, as you really can't afford any kind of those big errors and expect to still get out of a last chance race with the talent pool we're working with.
He missed the entire jump, did Tyler Meninga, so he'll continue away in the 6th position ahead of Alexander Rossi in the Andretti Rallycross car in lap 5 or 6 of this event. It looks like it's all Scott Speed's. 3-time global Rallycross champion, former Formula 1 driver too, back in Toro Rosso, back in 2007 for Toro Rosso. And he's a driver who currently represents Subaru Motorsports USA, does a lot of work for Nitro Circus 2, along with Travis Pastrana. And his Volkswagen Beetle, initially that he won the championship with, Evan, was replicated into iRacing when the simulator introduced Rallycross for the first time to the public.
And since it's been on the service, it has been, I think, one of the most popular forms, and certainly as somebody who is no good at driving and does it for fun, one of the most entertaining. But he's in that Subi up at the front of the field. It is going to be the final time through the white right-hander, and Scott Speed played that one to a T. And he's going to be moving on to the feature race tonight from Daytona, making his 2nd consecutive after finishing 2nd last week at Norway. And unfortunately for the likes of Brandon Semenak, who again had speed early in this race, he is not going to advance. And that is going to be, I think, a tough pill to swallow for the driver who we certainly expected to be in it. He misses the feature for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, so there are the results on screen for that heat. Now, James, you're planning to jump in next week, correct, into this series?
Yeah, I had some technical difficulties this morning. I was planning to race today, but I am planning on jumping in next week. I need to get some practice in for sure. I know I'm definitely going to be hitting up Abbott, Connor, Christian, Travis, some of those guys to get some practice sessions in so I can get up to speed. But, you know, racing with most of these guys for the last 3-4 years in real life is definitely has given me an idea of what I'm expecting and what I'm going into.
You know it's Sonoma next week, right? Do you know it's Sonoma next week? I'm just confirming.
Yes, I do.
Okay. No, cool, because I was going to say, it's a fantasy track on iRacing. iRacing have brought in a lot of real-world circuits, but they brought in some fantasy ones, and we put 2 of those on the schedule. That's the Atlanta long layout and Sonoma. But I tell you what, if Sonoma can learn a lesson from the virtual world, I'm not kidding, is seriously like one of the best circuits on the iRacing service. They've got to introduce it in the real world somehow.
Oh man, that would be great. I've seen the layout of the track. I'm going to drive it, get some practice in on it. But yeah, it's great to be able to model these tracks in iRacing and see how they actually work, and then potentially be able to put them into the real world. I'd like to potentially see that a lot more over the next few years.
I know one driver who would appreciate that wine country circuit to be added to the real-life calendars, Cabot Bigham, the Californian, who's on the top spot for LCQ number 2, along with Craig Breen in second position, and Semi-Matty Trogan rolling from third. So that is a heavy stacked front row for this LCQ. Only one of them going to be able to move on. We look back at the second row of drivers. Garrett Smithley, the part-time NASCAR Cup Series driver, will start fourth. The Supercross champion, Chad Reed, will start in the number 5 position. They will all be joined by, I think, what is probably the most unique row of racing you've ever seen. 2016 NHRA Drag Series champion Ron Capps in P6. Behind, you've got Jim DeChamp with Travis Pastrana and Connor Daly, 7, 8, and 9. And a big shout out as well to the 199 to Travis Pastrana. I know a lot of the drivers competing in this were more or less recruited by the superstar to get into this event. It has been a big supporter of iRacing, and of course the folks at Subaru as well, for being the title partner of this Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. Only one spot left in feature race from Daytona. We look for the lights. Cabot Bigham. Let's see if he can get it done from the inside of the front row.
Semi-Matty Trogan's my favorite on pace, but Bigham's got that inside line, and here we go for the final LCQ of the day. Huge jump by Breen. Same for Bigham. Bigham's actually got a slow getaway, Trogan around the outside as we see some trouble down the back of the pack.
Yeah, Chad Reed, Travis Pastrana got together, so Reed going to take a de facto Joker lap. But again, that incident more or less takes them out of this thing, as now contact, and up and over! A flip for the 11 car, as Jim DeChamp went up and over, made contact. I believe it was Trogan who pushed him out onto one of those turtle curbs, flipped him over. And that's a little bit more than that light bit of rallycross contact, as Breen, courtesy of that great jump at the start of this race, now is going to be your current race leader. His advantage sits at 9/10 of a second over Garrett Smithley, P2.
And have a look at this. Trogan's going to be impeded by Smithley, who's had an abysmal entry onto the jump. But at the moment, looking at the split times, Trogan could easily be leading this race, but he's got to take the Joker this lap round.
He can't afford to sit behind the 51 machine any much longer. Does he opt to go for it? No. We saw last week in Norway, James, the Joker was almost exclusive to just the first or just the last lap. But as we see Bigham now make a move into P2, would you suggest Trogan get out of the way, because he's got the speed, but he is in traffic here, and it's allowing Breen to get out in front now as he finally gets it from Smithley before getting tagged?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Wow, and you see Cabot there, Trogan off there. They made a little bit of contact. That looked like a racing incident to me, though.
It was that side-to-side contact that we talked about. He got hit by Smithley, and now more contact as he tried to get back it onto the racetrack as he pulled up in front of the 22 of Chad Reed. So how the mighty have fallen for Semi-Matty Trogan, who made it to the feature race last week. Did not get the result that he wanted, but certainly one of the best iRacing rallycross drivers on the service. Not going to be racing for the big points this afternoon. They're all chasing Breen out in front, who is pulled away in the 42.
What a start from Breen, though. To go back to the beginning of this race as he heads through to the International Horseshoe, he skyrocketed off the line. Bigham went nowhere, and Trogan around the outside really just had to take turn one, and that's the issue of starting around the outside for Semi-Matty Trogan. But I felt like he had to take the Joker that lap round. And then, Evan, I felt like he had to make an overtake on Craig Breen. The fact that he didn't take the Joker, you saw what happened. It just caused chaos, too much traffic to deal with. And with such limited laps, I'm sure our 2019 world champion, Semi-Matty Trogan, will be lamenting that mistake.
And he would have been able to make the passes without the spin anyways as Breed gets to the last lap, but it really is kind of taking the path of least resistance, James, to just shortcut those drivers and get around them. Obviously going to save you a lot more time than trying to wrestle them out of the way.
Totally agreed.
What'll be the final couple of quarters for the 42 machine up in front. He's been basically picture perfect. Cabot Bigham started on a pole in this one, was able to move up and into the number 2 spot after dropping a few early, but it is not going to be enough because his choker has already been used up, and it is Breen at the front, checkered flag, and the winner of LCQ number 2, and that will set the field of 10 cars who will race in tonight's feature for the St. Christopher's Truckers Relief Fund iRX Sunshine State Showdown, Johnny, as we look at the LCQ2 full results.
You look at the background. I don't know who that was in the VW, just taking a tumble through the weeds, but there are the results. Breen through to the feature. He'll start from last, though, so he won't have the best of grid positions. We say goodbye to Cabot Bigham, Garrett Smithley, of course, Connor Daly there too, and unfortunately for them, their day is done in this All-Star Invitational. But tell you what, it's been a good event so far, Evan, at a track that is notorious for the difficulty of overtaking. It's been a good one today with our all-star cast of talent.
It has been, and it is time for the main event. So as these drivers get one final warm-up session under their belts, we'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. And when we come back, we're going to go feature racing for the iRX Sunshine State Showdown. You're watching the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama.
I am James Rogers, owner and CEO of Spartan Direct LLC, and I am proud to partner with St. Christopher's Truckers Fund. Many truck drivers today are faced with unexpected injury or illness and have to come off the road, and the fact is, if our wheels aren't turning, we aren't earning. There's not a lot of support for drivers in these situations, and that's why SCF is so very important and vital. SCF steps in and provides a short-term safety net for drivers out of work because of injury or illness, and they step in and pay necessity household expenses, including rent, mortgage, utility bills, vehicle payments, and insurance payments. Knowing SCF is here for my drivers and myself is a stress relief in very stressful times, and I would like to encourage you all to support SCF's mission by making a donation at truckersfund.org. Have a good day. Stand against all odds.
Back live from the virtual Daytona International Speedway as the iRacing Sports Network's coverage of the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama, continuing tonight with round 2 of this 2020 campaign for the St. Christopher's Truckers Relief Fund iRX Sunshine State Showdown. The heat races, the LCQs have all come and gone. We're ready to go feature race racing as we welcome you back up and into the broadcast booth. Myself, Evan Pasoko, joined alongside by Jonathan Saban and James Renner. And of course, we've seen, Johnny, a couple of different drivers who I think we thought would have been on the grid for this one to get knocked out. Let's recap where the 10 drivers in this main event came from. Of course, it all started heat race number 1, only the top 2 drivers getting through, and it was a back-to-back Yokohama pole position award win for Mitchell de Jong. He basically swept the evening of competition last week in Norway. So far, so good. He had the top spot in heat race number 1 in the 2018 iRacing Rallycross World Championship. Driver was able to take the checkered flag at heat race run, joined by Kevin Swindell, who is the driver that, again, I've been saying many times I've been fascinated with, the 4-time Chili Bowl Nationals champion. Those were the first 2 drivers to start up front, but unfortunately for Swindell, unable to make that transition, and instead it was Martel who came from 4th on the grid, stealing that number 2 transfer spot to get here.
Yeah, 23-year-old Connor Martel from Colchester in Vermont in the United States of America. He races in Rallycross Lights in the US. He was the 2018 American Rallycross 2 champion. That's the development series. That's one step below the America's Rallycross Championship, which Scott Speed won in the same year. And we didn't see Scott Speed in the feature race today, Evan, and that's going to hurt his championship challenge by quite a hefty margin, because this feature race pays the most points by a country mile.
Yeah, Scott Speed came into this evening 38 championship points, 10 behind de Jong, which seems like a significant margin, but that's ahead of, everybody else on the grid from 3rd position on back. Then we went over to heat race number 2. We saw Andreas Bakkerud, who we talked a lot about last week, of course, with his home race for the 28-year-old Norwegian, who actually won at Lankenbanen in 2016. He got the win, though, here in heat race number 2 to punch his ticket on through. And then James Hinchcliffe, one of the first drivers who did not see the feature race last week to get in today, the 2016 Indianapolis 500 pole sitter, looked really good.
Yeah, Hinch is amazing. Great to see IndyCar represented in this too. And he's had some good fun out there. Unfortunately for his Andretti Rallycross teammate of Alexander Rossi and teammates for Andretti in IndyCar too, only one of them will be heading to this feature, and that's Hinchtown himself.
And then we went over to heat race number 3, saw another fun duo up at the front of the field as Rallycross Lights Cup champion Kevin Hansen took home that win from 2nd. And Parker Kligerman, you talk about that bit of flavor, the NASCAR NBC analyst and pit reporter, as well as a co-owner of the Burton Kligerman Esports team in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, and 2-time NASCAR Truck Series winner, was able to make his way in. Another driver who did not find that success week 1, making it happen here on American soil.
Yeah, it's good. And you know what? The sim is about seat time, because as James Rimmer alongside us in the commentary booth was discussing that, this is a little different to the real world. As much as simulation racing is simulating the real thing, it's very tough to get that feel from your butt, that basically that practical feel. And for Parker Kligerman, the more seat time he gets, the quicker he'll be, and he's definitely impressed today. If you make the feature race, you don't really fluke that too often.
And of course, heat race number 4, we saw Christian Brooks, the Superkarts USA Pro Kart champion, one of the younger drivers in the field, go pole to checker. He won heat race 4, punching his ticket through, along with Travis McCoy, who had to kind of make the longest trek, if you will. Started 6th position, only Martel 7th to 2nd, and to make up more ground to advance to the feature race. So McCoy with an impressive showing in the number 3 machine. And now let's talk the LCQ, James, because that was really where we saw some stacked lineups. A lot of talented, I'd say at least 7 or 8 of those drivers I could have easily have seen qualifying in through their heat race to get on through. But in heat race, or in LCQ number 1, I should say, it was Scott Speed taking home the win. So we'll see him in this feature race. And then the second time around, it was Craig Breen. So those were the final 2 drivers to make it to the big show.
Yeah, and like you guys have been talking about, and we've been discussing this whole time, it's a simulation of the real thing. So everyone needs to keep that in mind. So what you will see is, while it's a somewhat even playing field, you'll see people like Scott Speed, Alexander Rossi, James Hinchcliffe, these guys who do this full-time, full professionally, who have done thousands and thousands of hours of seat time. The discipline starts to show through. And that is not apparent through every single driver who participates in iRacing. So what you're going to see is, over time, the guys who are really, really involved in the real life racing, you might not see crazy moves or anything like that, but what you will see is the discipline and the strategy behind the scenes that potentially might pay off for a win in the end or a podium.
It's funny as well, Johnny, because we talked through some of those heat races and the LCQs on taking that Joker lap, which again here at Daytona, following the American-style way of rally is the shorter way through. We kind of questioned and brainstormed ourselves. Were some of the moves that these drivers opted to take the right ones or the wrong ones that led to them either getting here or getting sent home?
Yeah, most certainly. And one other thing to note, too, is that these drivers are using a fixed setup, so it's frozen between each car. That means it's an equal level playing field from the VW to the Fiesta to the Subaru, and it's tried to even it up as much as possible. So it's really all based on skill and talent. But now we head to our feature race, the final race of the day. It's going to be an awesome one. 10 laps of action, 1 Joker available to each drivers, but 10 all-stars ready to fight in this field.
And 10 going to be the magic number as well, because we changed the distance for this feature race, James, from 6 to 10. How big of a factor, if any, does that have on how these drivers have to approach this?
It's a big, big, big factor. What you're going to see is a lot of the seasoned guys, they're going to back off on taking risks on the first lap. You're not going to see big risks from the big guys because they know there's 10 laps to get any mistake back, and they're going to sit back, they're going to watch other people make mistakes, and then take advantage.
Well, let's take a look at our iRacing starting grid for tonight's iRX Sunshine State Showdown from Daytona. Top spot goes once more to Mitchell DeYoung in the number 24 VW, the driver out of Temecula, California, alongside Andreas Backerud, the number 13 car looking for a trip to victory lane. He'll start alongside in second. Very, very outside of the front row, going to go to the newcomer, the 71 of Kevin Hansen. Johnny, so impressive in his iRX Subaru World Rallycross Championship debut.
And in my opinion, has the worst spot here at the start. You either want to start first, fourth, and if you're going to start second in Backerud's position, ever important right now to scream off the line and climb to the inside.
We saw Christian Brooks, therefore, going to get the inside of the second row at fourth, and Connor Martell in the middle in the number 5 position. There's the Canadian James Hinchcliffe in the number 6 spot. Parker Kligerman will start from 7th, along with Travis McCoy in the number 8 position. And now we go to our LCQ transfers at the very back. Scott Speed in his 41 Subaru, joined by the 42 car of Craig Breen. That is a look top to bottom at your iRacing starting grid. 10 of the best drivers in the world set to fight for the checkered flag, simulation style, on iRacing for the virtual Daytona International Speedway. DeYoung from pole inside of the very front row as we say let's go racing from Daytona. 3 wide to turn 1. DeYoung goes for the Joker off of the bat, and he's got company.
Oh, and Backerud's been tagged at the International Horseshoe, and that's going to demote him a position here behind James Hinchcliffe in the Andretti Rallycross car.
The DeYoung 1, Brooks 2, Kligerman 3, Speed 4. Those are the drivers who went for the Joker. Now contact as James Hinchcliffe gets moved out of the way by Backerud. Oh, there's a lot of contact. Speed gets tagged. Backerud now is into the barrier, and after a tough start, it gets worse for the 13.
And that was Craig Breen coming in way too hot into the middle sector. He's tagged Hinchcliffe, it's caused a concertina effect. He's tagged Martell, gone into Backerud, gone into Speed. It's just absolutely chaotic here to begin the race, but there's still 9 laps to go. Plenty of time as DeYoung leads by 1.7 seconds.
And a Joker taken by Kevin Hansen, so he'll move up into the number 4 spot ahead of Scott Speed, who had the rough start in that one. Then it is Breen, so that's kind of a look at your top 6. Looks like the night is done for the 3 of Picoy just as it started. But DeYoung, obviously, from that inside positioning, was able to go for the Joker first lap. And admittedly, Mitchell DeYoung, if not the outright fastest, at least the top 2 or 3 car in this, I think it is the heavy favorite, James, given his performance last week and his history in iRacing Rallycross. But when you let somebody like that get the Joker out of the way and just get wide open racetrack like he has now, you're not doing yourself any favors.
No, and this is nothing new. I used to race with Mitchell back in the GRC days, and you know, this is par for the course. He gets clear air in front of him and he puts on a masterclass. He really He really, really should be a time driver in a series right now in real life. He is an incredible driver, an incredible guy, and he really deserves to be out there. And he's showing everyone exactly why right now by putting a big gap between him and the rest of the field.
And I think that's something as well, Johnny, that if you're a sim racing fan watching this, you know the name Mitchell DeYoung, and it could be from the iRX, it could be for the World Championship Grand Prix Series, it could be the VRS GT iRacing World Championship. I mean, he does so many things on the sim, not to overshadow, of course, that a 2014 X Games gold medalist in Rally Lights.
Yeah, people often forget that too. DeYoung is, as much as he's good in the simulator, is a beast in the real world. And it's nice seeing him watch the VW in the Subaru iRX All-Star Invitational as we watch the battle here for the second position. This is Parker Kligerman attacking Christian Brooks. And one thing as well we're watching these guys do, James, is drive on two wheels. Now, I spoke to Cabot Bigham last year. He jumped into the commentary booth with us, and he said, I've been on one wheel, I've been on three wheels before. He's done everything.
Yeah, and you know, when you're turning countless laps, it happens. You catch a curb, you catch a pillow on the outside of the dirt where it's all built up, and you do catch one. You see him go three wheels right there. It happens pretty regularly, and sometimes it can be to your advantage. Sometimes it's definitely not to your advantage.
Well, some separation in this one, as you can see, Kligerman trying to close the gap on Brooks. This fight for second, one of the more entertaining ones on track, but as well behind kind of a trio. Scott Speed has been able to get back in front of Kevin Hansen. Breen's still with them, so this is a trio for fourth position on the back. Scott Speed might be able to pull a podium out of this thing still.
Well, wait for this, though, because Craig Breen is yet to take to the Joker. And so unless he has been given a penalty, so look out for that come the end of the race. It's a 5-second penalty. But he can take to the Joker, gain 2 seconds, which he's going to do now. But it's whether or not he can clear the penalty. He's absolutely butchered the Joker, and he's only going to climb behind Scott Speed. So throw that possibility out the window.
He's just not the greatest. The Joker laps there for Breen as he was really tight on the curbs and really slow as he kind of got it jacked up on the inside there. I think he almost hit the trussing for the RX sign down on the bottom, and it is really a zero net gain now as we watch this battle for second. If Kligerman and Brooks get all these drivers in this feature race, going to be walking away with a lot of points. That's big for somebody like Kligerman who missed out on that in the first week, but it is a heavy point spread towards the front of the field. 40 for the winner, 30 for second, 25 for third. So that's why I think Speed's going to do everything he can to close the gap here with a lap and a half left. He's close.
How about that? Over the jump of Parker Kligerman. Oh, not over the jump, over the bollard.
He made it a jump.
Oh, goodness me. That's what I was talking about, James.
Yeah, and you see them, that just means that they are right on the limit. They're trying to get every single inch on the inside of that apex of that corner. And sometimes, honestly, hitting the inside of that corner can help rotate the car. So you'll see some of them are actually using those curbs to help rotate the car when it's difficult going from tarmac to asphalt, or tarmac to dirt, excuse me, and getting a lot of understeer.
The battle for second, third, and fourth going to carry on behind this man out in front. Mitchell DeYoung doesn't put a tire wrong, and for the second week in a row, he wins in the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational, this time doing it in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Second goes to Christian Brooks. Parker Kligerman rounds out the podium as Scott Speed.
Somebody should tell them they're done. They're still racing.
Oh, they love it, don't they? These guys are. These guys love and live motor racing. Andres Baccarat at the end of the day had a Joker up his sleeve, used it on the final lap, but went nowhere. Only ended up in 9th as well after, I believe. No, he didn't receive a penalty, so excuse me on that. But brilliant for DeYoung. We see the burnouts as usual. There's no stopping this guy, Evan. And in my opinion, no disrespect to Sammy Matty Trogan, because he's an awesome driver and he's very talented in himself. But had DeYoung not had to miss 2 rounds of the World Championship last year, he could have been a double iRacing world champion in Rallycross.
And Sammy Matty, of course, made this feature last week. Of course, DeYoung would go on to get the race win. but he has done just about everything that he can. And honestly, James, can't say we're shocked. 2 back-to-back pole position awards, wins both of his heat races both weeks, wins both the features, and handily as the margin of victory, 10.4 seconds.
Anyone familiar with Mitchell or any of his racing out by either iRacing, virtual or real, should not be surprised by this whatsoever. He is consistent. He is very disciplined, and he does not make mistakes. He minimizes every single mistake he makes. So you'll see Christian Brooks coming in second here. He's very similar to that, but I mean, you can see the gap there. I mean, 10 seconds to first place is nothing to scoff at.
And he is going to be standing by with us in victory lane in just a few moments. We'll step aside one final time. We'll wrangle up our pro drivers and we'll chat with them next. It is Mitchell DeYoung, race winner of the St. Christopher's Truckers Relief Fund iRX Sunshine State Showdown. We'll talk with him next.
I am James Rogers, owner and CEO of Spartan Direct LLC, and I am proud to partner with St. Christopher's Truckers Fund. Many truck drivers today are faced with unexpected injury or illness and have to come off the road, and the fact is, if our wheels aren't turning, we aren't earning. There's not a lot of support for drivers in these situations, and that's why SCF is so very important and vital. SCF steps in and provides a short-term safety net for drivers out of work because of injury or illness, and they step in and pay necessity household expenses, including rent, mortgage, utility bills, vehicle payments, and insurance payments. Knowing SCF is here for my drivers and myself is a stress relief in very stressful times, and I would like to encourage you all to support SCF's mission by making a donation at truckersfund.org. Have a good day. Stand against all odds.
And welcome back live to the virtual Daytona International Speedway, where the iRacing Sports Network coverage of the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama continued tonight with round number 2 of this 6-week All-Star Championship with tonight's iRX Sunshine State Showdown. As we welcome you back in to our coverage, Evan Pasoko, Jonathan Simon, James Rember with you, and let's talk with your top finishers for round number 2 of the championship. And for the second week in a row, Johnny, it is Mitchell DeYoung in victory lane.
And Mitchell, yet again, another victory. But most importantly, we always talk about the wins and how good they feel. I want to know what you think about having this new iRacing rule where you can take the Joker on the first lap, just like the real world.
I'll be honest, hearing about it yesterday, I was actually really excited for it. Without a doubt, I think it's really helped the racing a lot. Just being able to kind of split up the field like that right from the beginning. I don't think it really hurt strategy. As far as my point of view, I think it almost helps because you give everyone a better chance of making through the first corner without any drama. So I think that's a great rule. Hats off to the guys that put that in place. It was definitely cool, different dynamic for sure. But yeah, glad everything worked out. You know, able to take the Joker right off the start, have a bit of a lead, and just try not to make any mistakes.
And you've won the Yokohama Pole Position Award twice now. So is that 2 custom skateboards you're going to get from Bear Walker himself?
Shoot, I guess it will be. That's awesome. No, I'm excited for it. Looks cool already from what I've kind of seen, and yeah, that's a cool thing because it's something that you don't often get in a lot of championships that we race in too. So that's definitely a cool thing that we have in this series. So that's awesome.
And compared to the real world, do personalities sort of come out in the wash on the sim too? So are there certain guys you're racing against going, oh, I remember when he landed on top of me back in the lights days? Is that stuff you're thinking about at personalities out there?
I'll be honest, for me, absolutely. Racers have a long-lasting memory. I think everyone kind of says that. So yeah, for sure. We all remember our history, whether we raced back in 2014 with each other or more in recent times. So it's a cool thing, racing it on the virtual track, different dynamic, but at the same time, we're still just as competitive and going for the same thing to win. So it's pretty cool.
And hey, having Red Bull involved, of course, too, for yourself personally, and having Coanda Sim Sports really helped you go a long way in the sim racing world. And, to your success today and to your success last week, you head to Sonoma next week, and I'm thinking, oh, that's been one of your best tracks as well in the well, actually, no, excuse me, sorry, I should say the opposite. It hasn't been one of your best tracks as well, but I feel like you could prove that wrong in the Rallycross universe.
Yeah, you're definitely right. It is not one of my favorite, I'll be honest. Never quite figured out the dirt section. I kind of have an idea of what I need to do, but it's very hard to nail it in the actual race, in the actual qualifying. So, hopefully we'll be able to do it this time. We had a good start to the kind of season already, so we'll do our best. We got a lot of things kind of starting up with Porsche as well, and got to prepare for everything, and yeah, we'll do our best to manage.
Well, the talent that Mitchell de Jong has here, preparing for multiple world championships on the simulator, but there's another man who's ever talented in the Rallycross universe, and he's alongside James Rimmer, and that's second place, Christian Brooks.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, Christian, how's it going?
Oh, all good, man. Just still pretty wired off that race, but somehow we managed to hold those guys off. So I think it was a good race for me, starting in fourth and coming in P2. I'm pretty happy about it, and Mitchell is just unbelievably quick. So I'm gonna have to spend a few more weeks, maybe years on the sim before I can match his pace. But yeah, we're gonna keep practicing, and hopefully we can give him a run at the next race.
Well, you're not the only person thinking that. I think everyone's sort of in the back of their mind thinking, how does Mitchell exactly do that? But you took a year off from Rallycross last year and took some time to go in some open wheel cars, do some F4, do a little bit of everything. Do you think that's impacted, how you drive Rallycross? I mean, it must feel good to be back on a Rallycross track. I know obviously, all of us used to race together, and it must be nice seeing some familiar names out there, even though you may be banging doors like usual.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, I mean, Rallycross is one of the most fun forms of motorsport out there. So it's cool to be able to get on and race with the guys that I used to compete in championships with, and names like Martel and P. Coy. I mean, I race them every year through my Rallycross experience, all 3 years. So it's cool to get out there and then get out there with guys like Reed and Pastrana and guys that just huge names that actually can wheel on the simulator. So it's cool. I know everybody is just getting into it. So it's cool to see who hops on and gets it right away. Some people it takes a bit longer, but yeah, I think it's really fun, the transition, and being able to come back to Rallycross and still be competitive is pretty cool. And I mean, I'd like to. This game is kind of like racing in the real world. I mean, you never want to get beat by anybody. So when you're 4 or 5 tenths off, you're taking it to heart, and you're trying to find every every quarter tenth you can find around the track. So that's what I really love about rallycross is one mistake can be so huge compared to open wheel. But I've really liked racing in rallycross, and hopefully I can do it in the real world again one day.
Do you feel like making that transition over to some of the open wheel stuff? Obviously, you and Connor battled for a championship back in 2018 in iRX 2. But do you feel like making that transition over to open wheel, obviously you have the karting experience as well, did that help you with some of your rallycross skills? Obviously very different sports, but some of the same inputs.
I'd actually reverse your question. So for me, I feel like the rallycross has actually helped the open wheel a lot. Just strictly car control. In open wheel, obviously, when the car snaps, most of the time you're going around or you're going to have a big save, or big moment, they like to call it, basically on the edge of your seat. So in rallycross, you can control that a lot easier. And coming from that, and just, I wouldn't say easier, but you have to control it to be quick. So coming from rallycross and going to the open wheel stuff right out of the gate, I mean, we had a podium in my first race in F4, which I was shocked by. Coming into open wheel, I thought it'd probably take us a season. That's why we went F4 and then to USF to get some experience under our belt first. And yeah, I mean, the rallycross, really everything I hop into now, I feel like I can adapt well, considering you have standing launches like drag racing, sometimes half ovals, dirt, and road courses. So it kind of gives you all the elements and a lot to think about when you're on track.
Well, thanks, Christian. It was great talking to you. And if anyone's interested and wants to see some crazy overtaking, go on YouTube and look up Christian's Coda race from last year in F4, and you will see some incredible racecraft. Thanks, Christian.
Awesome. Thank you, James.
And we'll continue things down along our podium with the driver of the number 77 machine, Parker Kligerman. And Parker, you just held off Scott Speed for a podium in a rallycross race at Daytona. How you feeling?
Pumped up. So when we beat him in the heat, I started screaming and I let him know over the driver chat that I had just beat him, because that's like beating, the rallycross god, basically. So I was really pumped up. That was cool. And hold him off there. In the heat race, I was shaking. I was a little bit more in tune in this main race, but I was in the zone. I felt like when I was catching Christian and Scott was behind me, I was tuning him out, and I was just driving and trying to get by Christian. Couldn't get it done, but really cool to get a top three. I'm in this rallycross stuff. I'm new to it, but I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. You've driven a lot of things, not just on iRacing, in the real world, and of course, you get to try some unique cars as well on proving grounds and whatnot. But, I mean, what is this rallycross car like, and how has the learning process been over the last couple of weeks into the opener last Friday, and, of course, now leading to a podium and a feature here in week 2?
Well, I'd say that, rally cars have always been something I've been fascinated by. I just love them. I actually came close to maybe racing in rallycross a couple years ago, and it didn't quite come together, but I really wanted it to happen, and I thought, it's just something that's always piqued my interest. I love the cars. I think they're incredible machines. They've got so much power, and they're just these pent-up, crazy little things that, you're just doing crazy stuff with. So I love it. When this came about and Chris Leone was reaching out to me about doing this, I was all in. I was like, absolutely, because I want the excuse to have to drive these more, and this has been a great excuse to do that. So I just really enjoy it. I think it's some really fun racing. My only thing would be I wish the races were a little longer. I know that coming from NASCAR, we have a bit longer races, and these seem to fly by, and sometimes I'm just getting in the groove 5 or 6 laps in, and the race is over. And so I'm like, man, we need more laps. But I know in the real life these cars can't last that long, maybe. So we're going to stick to the shorter stuff, and it's fun. It's cool to do it. And if you get, in a tussle or whatever, it can be pretty crazy how the races sort of change all in a second.
We've seen drivers, from the NASCAR disciplines, as you mentioned, IndyCar, NHRA, of course, the rally guys and the sim guys. But, to be able to come out here and compete, to know that you're having a ton of fun. Now that you've got a P3 under the belt and you get some points, are you kind of starting to allow yourself to build expectations as we head to Sonoma next week that, this 77 is a car that needs to be in the feature race every week and probably has the speed to do so, maybe?
Well, it's a clear-cut way for someone of my experience level to make sure that I'll be head first in the barrier at the next track, probably lap 1 of the heat race. But I'd say, I've been pretty confident coming into this. I did a lot of practice going into the Hell race the first week, and I just had computer issues that sort of messed me up. And I think I was actually faster there than I was this week. But this week I came in, I told Ryan Truex before, I was like, I am determined to make this feature. So it was going to come hell or high water. But you mentioned it. There's so many cool drivers in this series. It's one of the most diverse driver groups, I think, in any of these series that we have going on right now. And, racing with Alexander Rossi and Connor Daly and Ron Capps and Justin Lofton and all the rallycross guys like Scott Speed and Mitchell. It's a really cool group. And I hope fans are kind of tuned into this and seeing, all these drivers kind of stepping out of their comfort zone and doing something different. And we're seeing that throughout the sim racing world, which is really cool. But this has just been a lot of fun, and I want to go win one. So hopefully we can find ourselves increasing in pace, and maybe Mitchell will have to start at the back one time or get like 1,000 pounds of success ballast, and we'll actually have a chance. But I look forward to that time.
Well, your next opportunity to fight for the win going to be next Friday as we head out even further west on North America as we go to Sonoma. But Parker, congrats on the top 3 here tonight, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. Enjoying it. Thanks to everyone for putting on the series. Looking forward to Friday.
Your third place finisher tonight from Daytona International Speedway, and a big thanks to Parker, Christian, and Mitchell, your top 3 finishers in today's St. Christopher's Truckers Relief Fund iRX Sunshine State Showdown, for giving us some time post-race and talking with them. And just wanted to hit on that point one more time that the charity partner for today's race, the St. Christopher Truckers Development and Relief Fund, is a truck driver charity that helps over-the-road and regional semi-truck drivers and their families when an illness or injury causes them to be out of work. If you go to truckersfund.org/Yokohama, you can donate, help make a difference, and you as well receive a rebate code for your next purchase of a set of Yokohama tires. And as round number 2 falls into our rear view mirror, first, James wanted to thank you for joining us up into the booth. I know the plan was to be down onto the virtual racetrack, but we certainly appreciated your insight up top with us, and hopefully things go all well, and we'll see you on track next Friday.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'll see you next Friday one way or another. I'm sure of it.
And of course, as this season and this 6-week championship continues to roll on, Johnny, we see Mitchell DeYoung, unsurprisingly, come out ahead as the very clear favorite, but of course, keeping all these drivers on their toes. A very different racetrack, and a track that sounds like it'll be a challenge for the 24 VW as we head out to the fantasy track at Sonoma Raceway for round 3.
And it was a track voted favorite along with the Atlanta long layout, which will take place for round 5 of the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. So Sonoma is a thrilling circuit. It's got some fast sweeping corners. The Joker is quite challenging as you try and brake to take the Joker. There's a lot of drivers who will try and take the real racetrack. And we saw some massive pileups over the jump last year, and all in a bit of good fun for the Invitational. Let's see how these drivers enjoy the track layout as they head through the carousel to end the lap.
And we hope that you join us next time out for round number 3. But until then, that's it for us here tonight from the World Center of Racing. On behalf of our entire team here at the iRacing Sports Network, for everybody at court and the organization, Race Control, and all of those folks for making this possible, and as well for your broadcast team tonight. For James Rimmer, Jonathan Sabata, and myself, Evan Pasoko, want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Mitchell DeYoung, 2 for 2 as the race winner here from Daytona. We'll catch you next Friday. It'll be a 6 o'clock Eastern Time start once more for the virtual Sonoma Raceway. That race and every race of the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. It'll be found right here on the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night.